But you know, my wife Ann and I have been married since 1993, and we met at the downtown Rotary. So thank you for that. We have our son Tom is at Iowa State. I was talking earlier about that with John, and Tom, he's a mechanical engineering second year. My son John is a public defender, just got married to Allison, who's a physician at Children's Hospital and UNMC, and my daughter Ellie our daughter Ellie is in New York. She's been working for Armani for 7 years. She's still there. It's not any cheaper than it was when she got there. But in any event, it's good to have a dad around to help out. But and welcome Mayor Suttle. You know, it's always good to see Jim, and you know, you look around Omaha today and see all the things that have happened, and what a city we have. I have the opportunity once in a while to get up on the floor of the House and I give my Nebraska speech. I talk about how we govern differently, how we treat each other differently, how we care about each other, and how giving we are, and how when we decide to do something, we do it right. And as mayor, as member of the city council, Jim, you advance the city's interests so significantly, and every time I have the opportunity to do this, I want to congratulate you for all those efforts. So thanks, Jim, for that. I'm gonna, and John, of course, you know, takes care of with Dan, county government. It's good to have that oversight, of course. Let me just say a few things about bipartisanship. I know we talk a lot about it, but I'm telling you, it does work. It does work, and I'm going to give you a few examples of how we were able to work as a delegation, primarily in a bipartisan way, to do things that have been sitting there for years. And I'm going to start with the runway off it, and a good point was made by Dan about the economic vitality and importance of the base. And when I got into office, we've been sitting thinking about this runway for 20 years. I was thinking to myself, how I'm on the Armed Services Committee, I deal with the Joint Chiefs of Staff all the time, I'm briefed by the Air Force all the time, had 3 trips to the Middle East, visited the 55th in Milton Hall in England. These people are phenomenal, and all we want is a runway, so that the planes will land on a smooth surface. And 50% of it is a mess, and you can go walk around and you can see it's lingering and lingering. So why is it that it's taken this long? So we got together as a delegation, Jeff Fortenberry and I in the House primarily, and Deb in the Senate, and Governor Ricketts, and decided we were going to get it done. But first we had to go to the legislature to get the levy paid for, because the Air Force was not going to pay for the levy. So we had the opportunity to go visit with my old colleagues in the legislature and say, you know, you got to pay for this levy, because the Air Force just isn't going to do it. So the legislature stood up, got the levy paid for. We went back to the Air Force and said, let's move forward on the runway. So everybody had a role. Jeff had a role working with the leadership of the Republican Party. Deb did a great job in the Senate, and my role was the White House. So I like to tell the story. Barack Obama called me up one day and he said, Brad, I'd like to come to Omaha, visit Omaha. And I said, sure, you know, why not? I said, I'd like to have you come with me. I said, well, I've got the Delta flight. You know, there's nothing like the Minneapolis connection. No, I want you to come with me on the Air Force One. So it's a heck of an airplane. And I can tell you right now, my family's been in Nebraska since 1856. We came to Dakota County from Ireland. My mother's family came from Sweden. We ran Nebraska Clothing Company for 100 years. I've been in business all my life here, practiced law. I can think of nothing, and my parents and grandparents were so much involved in the community for so many generations. And I thought to myself, what an honor. I can't think of an honor greater than to have the President of the United States and take him, bring him to Omaha, to my city. And it was quite something. So we boarded the plane, and we're at Andrews Air Force Base, and I'm waiting around for the President to go, where are you? The thing about the Air Force One is it takes off when the President comes, obviously. So I walk into the Andrews Air Force Base, and there's King Abdullah of Jordan. I had met King Abdullah in Jordan a few months before in Amman, and he's an amazing guy. And he has 1.2 million refugees from Syria to deal with, and I really enjoy them, and I've had some time to spend them. So I walk in, and this doesn't happen to a 66-year-old very often, you know. And I walk into, Your Majesty, yes, Congressman. Well, there we go. So we had this conversation, and it was quite something for a kid from Omaha to have time with King Abdullah of Jordan. And we get on the airplane, we fly to Omaha. About halfway through the flight, the president came back to my little area, and he sat down. We started talking about basketball. We talked about Omaha. And I talked about my grandfather, Otto Swanson. And Otto started the National Conference of Christians and Jews in the 1930s to fight discrimination in Omaha. And it became inclusive communities, and there are some recipients in this room of the Otto Swanson Humanitarian Award actually receiving that award. So I told him that story. I told him about Otto and about how my grandfather represented our community. We all do that. We all take care of each other. But I also said, Mr. President, when we land, you're going to have to hold on really, really tight. And he said, why? I said, this runway, Mr. President, is a real mess. I mean, the President of the United States is a very nice guy. He really is. He's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to be with. And I said, okay, it's fine. I'll hang on tight. So he went back up to the front. We landed. God invited me to walk off the plane with him. And we walked off, and he got off the plane. I said, before he got off, I said, you're going to go to this arena, and not everybody there is going to agree with everything you want to do. What? No, I'm sorry. But I'll tell you what, they're going to give you a great welcome. And 11,000 people were at Baxter Arena, and he gave a speech that was truly amazing. And part of the speech, I'm sitting there listening to him, and he said, I want to tell you about Brad Ashford's grandfather, Otto Swanson. And he started the National Conference of Christians and Jews. That's what Omaha must be like. We fight discrimination. We push back on those kinds of things. And he put it in the speech. You know, that's as good as, whatever happens to me for the rest of this is as good as it gets. So I get back, about 5-6 days later, get a call from the Air Force. Well, we're going to do the runway. So I thought, no, I don't want to take credit for that, because actually it was sort of serendipitous. But anyway, we're glad the runway's getting done. Thanks to Jeff Fortenberry and Deb Fisher, we worked as a team, got it done. The next example, I think, is the Veterans Hospital. You know, that thing's been sitting out there in need of repair for heaven knows how long. And I had an opportunity. This is how great Omaha is. This is how incredible Omaha is. So about a week into my term, I think partially my job, I've been in the clothing business, part of my job is to sell Omaha, sell Nebraska. There are only 5 of us, and we have a lot of time on our hands because we should be doing a lot more than we are. So I have time on my hands. So I went to a little meeting with Bob McDonald, who is the Secretary of the Veterans Administration. He had just got appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate, to be the VA Secretary. And he's an interesting guy because he had been chairman of Procter & Gamble, and Warren Buffett was at that time a major shareholder of Procter & Gamble. So he said, Bob, we got to do something with this hospital. It's been on this list goes up and down the list like an elevator. And I said, we could do something different. I'll bet you, Bob, we could find donors to leverage with the federal money, and we'll build a medical center. I had no idea. I just knew that we would do it, because we always do that in Omaha. He said, well, that sounds interesting. So came back to Omaha, sat down with Walter Scott and said, why don't we build a Veterans Medical Center? And we got $56 million in the budget already appropriated. We could leverage the money and build. He says, we need to do that. I'm in. So we introduced the bill, bipartisan bill, half Republicans, half Democrats. Deb Fisher introduced the bill in the Senate. And what the bill does, believe it or not, and this is how we can change the government. Believe it or not, the Veterans Administration did not have the authority to enter into a public-private partnership to build a medical center. They were $800 million over budget at the Denver VA hospital, but they couldn't enter into they couldn't enter into a public-private partnership to do that. So we introduced the bill. A few weeks before I came back in September, the House Veterans Affairs Committee passed unanimously the bill out of committee. It'll be voted on in November. And we're going to get it done. And we're going to be, nobody else in the country has done anything like this. We're going to leverage donor dollars with federal dollars. We're going to build it locally and gift it back to the Veterans Administration. Seems like a logical thing to do. And we're going to do it right here in Omaha. And Bob McDonald comes back here and talks to people and says, only in Omaha could they come up with that. Only in Omaha could that happen. So those are two examples, I think, of very positive examples about how you can work in Congress. I don't want to go over my time. I want to talk about the Harrises, though, for a second. I just met the Harrises. And they're from Washington State. And when I ran for office, I'm going to give a political plug for myself here. When I ran for office, I know I can't talk politics, but I'm going to say this. When I ran for office, I said, I'm going to find 25 friends. And I think I found more than that. I think I found lots more than that, Democrats and Republicans. The best part of Congress is my friends. Just like this club. The best part of this club is our friends and the relationships. It is no different. We got ourselves into a mess in Washington because we created a hyper-partisan place. And we've got to stop it. We've got to stop it. And if there is any issue that we should be, there are lots of issues we can agree and disagree about, whether it's the war in the Middle East, whether it's the economy, but one issue we can all agree on: if we don't change how we govern, we're in deep trouble. If we don't change how we learn how not only to get along, but to stop the partisan gridlock, and we can talk about it till the cows come home. I have some ideas on how to do it. Congressional Quarterly did say I was the 6th most bipartisan member of Congress. I said, is that a surprise to people here? No, because that's how we govern here. If I didn't govern that way, I wouldn't even ask to be reelected. You have to govern that way. But the Harrises are from Washington State, and one of my best, I can say my best friends in the Congress is a guy named Derek Kilmer from their district. And they just introduced themselves and mentioned that Derek was their congressman. Young guy, terrific member, and we support trade. I would just want to say, lastly, something about trade, because it's controversial. There may be some people in this room that may not agree with me on the Trans-Pacific Partnership or expanding trade, but let me give you a little bit of a case for it. A little bit of a case for it. And it's so important to your district in Washington State, it's so important to our district in Nebraska. Just throw out a couple numbers. Some of them I'm sure you already know. We export $6.6 billion overseas from Nebraska. We import $4.2 billion into Nebraska. There are 14 free trade agreements in the world that we're a party to. We have a trade surplus in this country with every single one of those countries that are in that free trade agreement, whether it be Korea, South Korea, whether it be CAFTA, whether it be the Colombian trade agreement, whether it be NAFTA. We have a net positive cash flow into our state and into this country from every one of those free trade agreements. So why do we have a trade deficit? China is why we have a trade deficit. And what the Trans-Pacific Partnership does is it says this: we are going to Peru, for example, is one of the 11 TPP countries. Peru, Chile, Mexico, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Brunei, Singapore, Malaysia. Those countries represent 40% of the world's GDP. There are tariffs on our goods into those countries that go as high as 50% on manufactured goods, and 37% on, for example, on Nebraska beef. The New Zealanders can sell into Japan with 24% tariffs. Our tariff is 37%, and we are the 3rd largest exporter of beef in the United States. It's a major part of our business, obviously. We all know that. We all know that. Our #1 export product in Nebraska is processed agricultural products, about somewhere close to $2 billion a year. The second one is, believe it or not, is manufactured goods, near $1 billion. We manufacture in Nebraska about $1 billion worth of goods for export. And when we sell into TPP countries now, 40% of the world's GDP, you know, we run up against tariffs. It's harder for us to sell in than it is for us to buy from manufactured goods from outside the country. So we have a chance. We have a chance to pass something that's going to increase wages, because export jobs do increase wages. Women's employment is enhanced when they are own companies that export, and that data is out there. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership does a lot of other things. It lowers tariffs on 18,000 items, many of which we sell from Nebraska. One of the reasons, in my view, why we're running at less than 2% GDP growth is the whole world is running at much less GDP growth than they were before the recession. We need to kickstart our economy and the world's economy, or we're going to stay in the malaise we're in. So we have an opportunity here. We need to lower corporate taxes so that we're competitive with the world, and we need to start exporting, again, our exceptional products, our ag products, and it's going to enhance our quality of life here, in my view. We also have to, there's a lot of discussion, and it's absolutely correct, about what impact is this globalization having on workers. Well, obviously there are a whole swath of workers, probably between 45 and 65, who missed all this. They missed the new technology. We got to address that. We've got to train our young people with the skills so they can take these 21st century jobs. And those people that have not kept up with the technology, that we need to address that as well. We need to give them opportunities and options, and we're trying to do that in the House right now. And black youth, between 18 and 35 years old in this country, 41% of black males between 18 and 35 are unemployed. So what are we going to do about it? They need to be part of this new economy. They need to be part of the new world. And you know, we can do that. I've got a bill with Kevin Kramer, as a Republican from North Dakota, that says for any new federal project, whether it's a pipeline or a federal highway or whatever it is, the Department of Labor must go into that community and recruit black youth and to help train them between the ages of 18 and 35. We need to directly get those people working. And we need to work with the Urban League. We need to work with community-based organizations in the communities and with governments. The Department of Labor, instead of issuing so many regulations that it drives people absolutely crazy, and we need to roll those back too, instead of doing that, they need to help these people get jobs. That's what the Department of Labor ought to do. So I'm glad the Harrises are here. They can report back to Derek that we talked about trade, and it's an important part of the future for my children's future. Lastly, I want to say something about refugees and ISIS. You know, Charlie Dent is a congressman from Pennsylvania. He's a moderate Republican. He came to me about a year ago and he said, after San Bernardino, and he said, you know, there's a hue and cry about stopping Muslims from coming into this country. Presidential candidate running on it, they're saying, you know, that's not our value system, that's not who we are. But we got to be cautious, we got to be careful, we got to make sure that people coming into this country are vetted, especially from Syria and Iraq. But we've got to do it in a way that does not discriminate against somebody because of their particular religion. So we introduced a bill. We introduced a bill on refugees, and the Congress voted in a very bipartisan way to tighten up the visa waiver program, so that people coming in have dual citizenship that come in on a visa, that they are vetted. They can't just come in on a visa. We're taking a hard look at K-1 visas, which are visas that are given to a fiance of an American citizen, for example, so that their social media is checked, so that we make sure that people that come in here are vetted. And on the refugees, there are 60 million refugees in the world right now. In Syria, there are 6 million displaced people in Syria, within the country. There are 250,000 or more now, deaths of Syrian citizens. There are 4 million refugees plus from Syria. We have 6,000 Syrian refugees here, 1.2 million in Jordan, over 1 million in Germany, and many more in Turkey. So what we've done, and what the government has done, because we don't want to close our borders based on religion or ethnicity, we've added to the vetting so that when someone does apply, and it's an 18 to 24 month vetting process, as it is, and there's not one incident that we know of any refugee committing a terrorist act in this country. So what happens? They go through the 18 to 24 month period, they come over here, they go through Lutheran Family Services here in Omaha, for example, or Catholic Social Services. The background checks continue for a year, and then a year after they've been here, there's a final background check and a final certification. So we are dealing with those issues. It isn't as if we are not dealing with them. We are dealing with them, and we're dealing with them in a bipartisan manner. So when Charlie Dent, who's a 20-year Republican member, came to me and said, Brad, would you be the Democrat member on this bill? Because we don't want to lose our values, but we need to protect our country, keep it safe. So my message, I guess, and I'd be happy to take questions if there's time, is that we can do things together. And there are lots of other issues to talk about. But I think in the end, the issue that we all have to think about is we have to elect people who are willing to work with each other. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. We got to go back to the days when I worked for Roman Oruska, and when John Y. McAllister was in the, there are still stories about John Y. McAllister now. They're good stories about John Y. was always there to, it didn't matter what party anybody was. I mean, the greatest story in Omaha politics in my lifetime, in my view, and Steve remembers this very, very well, as does his brother John. When John Y. ran for the Senate and he lost, his party was at the same place that John Kavanaugh's event was. John Kavanaugh won. He got elected to the Congress. What did John Y. McAllister do? He walked right over to John Kavanaugh's victory party, got up on the stage, and congratulated John Kavanaugh. That's how we are here. That's the kind of people we are. And we have to take that back to Washington every single day. Thank you very much.
Brad, great story about Air Force One. I've heard that story before. In your comments, you haven't touched on the federal debt. Do you believe
It's too big. Oh my God, sure.
Do you believe it's a problem? And if you do, what are your thoughts on bipartisan cooperation?
It's a massive problem, and at the very least, we must immediately act to make sure that the debt is less, than the total GDP. So we have to act quickly to make sure that the debt doesn't go up any further than it is. When Bill Clinton left office, the debt was $9 trillion. It's now $19 trillion. We've been through 2 wars and a recession. That's what you get. You get a $19 trillion debt. That's not an excuse for not handling it. The deficit is almost $600 billion. We last balanced the budget during the Clinton administration. First of all, we need to balance the budget. And we need to do that in a way, though, that does not ruin the economy. And in my view, that means something like Simpson Bowles, where you combine investment with spending cuts. What happened in the sequestration of 2011, the sequestration that's really still in effect today, we decimated the military. Why did it take 5 years, 4 years to come back and hopefully get ISIS out of Mosul, finally? It's because we decimated the military. Our force level for the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy is below, almost as low as it was after the decommissioning of World War II. You can't expect those people to be deployed 5 to 7 to 9 times, sending them over and over and over again. So we have to break the sequestration. That means we have to invest in our military. We got to get it back up to a level where they are safe and help us be safe. So we have to invest. We also have to get control of the tax code, I think, because we're going to get to I want to get to 5% growth, just like Reagan got to 5% growth and Kennedy got to 5% growth. And the way we get there is by investing in infrastructure, investing in, investing in health, new NIH and new and better remedies for serious diseases, which will cut down the cost of Medicare. We need to get control of Social Security, which is running a $37 billion deficit. We need to get control of Medicare, which is running by 2033. They'll have to break into the Medicare Part A trust fund. So those are the problems. The solution is, in my view, 2 things: simplify the tax code, reduce reduce middle class taxes through a combination of balancing between credits and reductions in rates. I worked with Governor Heinemann on the largest middle class tax cut in the state's history before I left the legislature. And I think we have to do that same sort of thing. It's a combination of investment, it's reducing tax rates, and applying credits like child care credits to address societal need. But we need to do that at the middle class. We don't need to raise, in my view, taxes at the higher end. Raising taxes, I disagree with those in the political world who think we should raise taxes. I don't think we have to raise taxes to get there. But it's a combination, and then we have to get to a balanced budget. I've introduced a bill that says we shouldn't get paid if we don't balance the budget. I've introduced it with others. I've introduced a bill that says that that we should get to a balanced budget, and that's what I think we need to do. But it can't be done simply by cutting, and it can't be done by raising taxes. It has to be a combination of both.
Thank you for being here. My question is, you have a campaign ad talking about fixing Obamacare. Would you tell us what you believe is wrong and what the corrections are?
Sure. Okay, there are 10 bipartisan bills that I'm on that deal with Obamacare. I mean, the thing is, in 2010 it passed. It passed with no Republican votes. That was a big mistake. I never would have voted for something that only had the support of one party. It was an invitation to political disaster, certainly. We need to do a number of things. First of all, on the tax side, we're taxing small business and larger businesses to pay for Obamacare. And the problem with that is that when insurance has always not been taxed. And the reason it has not been taxed is because after the war, it was a way that employers could offer a benefit to employees and have it not be taxed. So that's the way our economy's worked since World War II. And we need to go back to that. The Cadillac tax needs to go away. Which in some cases is an increase on top of already increased premiums. It's an increase of another 40% on premiums. So we need to repeal that tax. We need to repeal the mandates on small businesses because they already employ they already insure 85% of the workers in this country already get insurance through their employers. Then we've got to deal with the cost of insurance itself. And I think we have to have give more flexibility to insurance companies to offer products like Blue Cross and Blue Shield. In talking to Steve Martin and talking about things he needs in order to fix it so he can get back into the business. They're not rocket science. But it's going to you can't simply, what's happened, and I got there, I said, why are we continually trying to repeal Obamacare with nobody offering a plan? It's nuts. That would never fly in the Nebraska legislature. Okay, we're going to repeal that. No, we're going to repeal it if we have a plan. Reduce taxes on small business, give insurance companies more flexibility on how they rate their products. And then on the healthcare side, the delivery side, give physicians the ability, we clamp down on physicians and their ability to work together and combine to provide healthcare. We clamp down on that. We need also to, it seems to be that regulations in the healthcare field generally are so significant and came so quickly that physicians and hospitals and healthcare providers just can't do it. Not that they won't, but it came too quickly and it's too expensive. So it's a combination of all those things. It could be done in a week. We could make Obamacare work, the ACA work. And I think there's no bad way to do it. There's no bad plan in my view. I've signed on to every bill I could find that dealt with it. But we've got to work together to do it. It can't be a gotcha vote. If you vote to repeal Obamacare, you're for to repeal Obamacare, or vote against repealing Obamacare, you're a socialist liberal. And if you vote the other way, you're you want to take 20 million people off of insurance. So I think it's going to take an across the aisle kind of approach. I think we're going to get there in the next session, but we got to have people that are willing to work together to get there. Thank you very much.
Brad, in recognition of your speaking with us today, we are going to make a contribution to our Polio Plus effort. Polio is one of the significant areas that Rotary International has worked in, and we are very close to eradicating polio from the face of the earth. It's only endemic in 2 countries, so we thank you for being here with us today, and we will make that contribution as recognition of your speaking with us today. And Rotarians, would you join me as we repeat the 4-way test?